Hello! If my knowledge of the time-space continuum is correct, this video should be uploaded about the same time I'm heading up to Auckland to finally see My Chemical Romance live in concert after being delayed 2 years in a row. Hence the t-shirt that is way too hot to be wearing in this weather, but you know, we must suffer for fashion, so I'm told. Or in my case, lack thereof. So, spoilers for the end of the previous serial. If you haven't seen Doctor Who and the Silurians, and you don't want the ending spoiled for you, just fast forward through the rest of this intro, okay? At the very end of the previous adventure, the Brigadier does just a little bit of a genocide, supposedly wiping out the Silurians. Yeah, right. You'd think the Doctor would be furious, but aside from one little throwaway line acknowledging continuity, there's just nothing. Back to the first Doctor's way of forgetting what major event just transpired in the last episode, are we? Great. This week we're taking a look at the Ambassadors of Death. Ooh, spooky. You know what's spooky? 7-part serials. Yes, back with another 7-part serial from 1970. Season 7 has been alright. Pretty good so far. Just quite a personal adjustment to the new format. I knew what was coming in terms of Earth-based stories, heavily featuring UNIT, and of course full colour, but there are a number of changes that I find so jarring. For instance, something I've noticed a lot in these last two stories but haven't mentioned yet is the presence of super abrupt transitions and cliffhangers. Usually for a cliffhanger, you'll get a bit of a build-up and then a couple of zooming close-up shots before fading into the credits. But now it's just boom, threat, quick reaction shot, and cut straight to credits. It is quite jarring. The same thing can be said about simple scene transitions. Quite often, back in the black and white era, you'll get a musical sting after a sentence, focusing on a character for a moment, and then moving on. Here it's just blah 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 blah, conversation done, next scene, hello there. Nowhere is this more obvious than in this one particular scene, where there's like half an explosion, then whoop, next scene. Where did the adverts used to go? Anyway, I'm getting far ahead of myself. The main crux of the plot, if I may attempt to condense it, is one astronaut gets sent into space to rescue 2 other astronauts. 3 beings wearing spacesuits return, but they are very clearly not the 3 human astronauts they were expecting. Bad guys want them for bad things. Good guys scramble to figure out what to do, and eventually it's revealed that they are indeed aliens. I shan't spoil who the ambassadors actually are, because it's kind of cool when it's eventually revealed. Yeah, call it an adjustment, but I've really got to get used to these longer, unfocused stories. The shorter and more self-contained, the better, I say. And while this one doesn't stand out as a main issue, it's just the 3rd serial in a row that felt like it went all over the place with subplots and plot points popping up and getting resolved while the main story slowly trudges along, which is something I initially praised a 4-parter, The Spearhead from Space, for, because they managed to work it all together and, yeah, everything resolved nicely. But just 7 episodes, it's too long. I'm sorry, Tedious Milkshake. I watched all 3 hours in a row, without falling asleep, mind you, and I get the feeling that for a lot of these Jon Pertwee adventures, I'm going to remember the essential details of, and think back on positively, but actually sitting down to watch them is just gonna drag. Spearhead from Space, The Silurians, The Ambassadors of Death, they're all great stories. They just are a little too long or have just a little bit too much unneeded fluff. But it is what it is. I understand they have to make enough episodes to make up a complete season, and it could be a lot worse. They could be boring, and so far they haven't been. So I hope you can understand why I haven't got a lot to say about the plot this time around, just a lot of observations. For one thing, this season seems to have a habit of fast-forwarding through aspects that Doctor Who would otherwise focus on. For instance, the 3rd Doctor's new TARDIS is just set dressing for one scene. There's no great reveal or anything. The Doctor's just walking through a cozy living room and, wait, is that the TARDIS console? Oh wait, is this the TARDIS? Not to mention the traditional companion's first reaction to entering the TARDIS for the first time just isn't a thing. because Liz appears in the same scene as the living room set, so I was obviously well accustomed to it. Hi, me from the future again. Is that the TARDIS? Because it's got the TARDIS console in it, but it just looks like a random living room. However, I finished watching the next serial, and the TARDIS console is just sitting in a shed. So, was that living room the actual TARDIS or not? And when you Google image search the Third Doctor's TARDIS, you get both the fancy looking living room and just the regular circles backgrounds. Like, it just looks like the normal TARDIS from William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. So, it's indecisive, I guess. Make up your own mind, because I don't know. This is easily the classic season so far where I can totally see unseen side adventures popping up in between episodes like they do in the modern series. Like, between Spearhead from Space and now, you could have, I don't know, a couple of Red Nose Day specials, 3 or 4 Big Finish productions. Actually, now, who am I kidding? There's probably like 50 Big Finish productions in between episodes. Something else to note about this serial in particular, the music slaps. While the main astronaut theme starts to get a little bit tiresome after 7 episodes, the basic score is great. With bass groove jazz, a thumping intro tune, and basically tranquility-based hotel and casino-esque music. Not the car though, we don't talk about the car. This would be a great soundtrack to have. You know how they like to release those like $100 vinyls? I can't justify that, but it's cool nevertheless. Some less than stellar elements. The visual quality of this is garbage. I'm sorry, I know about like Spearhead from Space being the first to be filmed in HD or something like that, and that's why it was like the first classic Doctor Who to be released on Blu-ray. And I'm pretty sure I skimmed through something on Wikipedia that mentioned how the resurrection process was difficult because of the damage done to the original master tapes for the Ambassadors of Death, but I'm sorry, just know that this visual quality was worse than the VHS rip of the Silurians I had to watch on Dailymotion. I'm sure Andrew Bowman's got a lot of trivia about this in the comment section below. Now, this might just be a minor nitpick, but I'm pretty convinced that I found a plot hole in this serial, consisting of a captured Liz being able to escape just by walking out the door, despite it being established that the exit door is always locked. That was my fault. The Incredible Hulk broke, no great loss there, but I put a tiny hole in the top of my first ever classic Doctor Who box set, which will be the next season I'm looking at, so that kind of sucks. Speaking of sucking, in the Ambassadors of Death, Unit sucks. They get their butts handed to them by just some random goons. Not exactly cutting-edge soldiers. Just about every scene they're in, one or more of them gets killed. And then there are those things that aren't good or bad, just very classic Doctor Who. In this case, it's the special effects. They're glorious. I mean, just watch.
Alright, no, these are special effects.
Let's see, what else? The astronauts were from a Mars probe, so does that mean that the Ambassadors of Death live on Mars alongside the Ice Warriors? Are they friends? Are they neighbours? Who knows, but it's cool to think about. And very last note. What the heck is transmigration of object? I can buy the TARDIS having this so far unseen ability to magically transport someone a few moments into the future, but the Doctor, completely separate from the TARDIS, makes an object disappear from his hand completely and then reappear later. Liz naturally assumes that it's some kind of TARDIS trick, but then the Doctor just responds, nope, that's just transmigration of object. What? I actually kinda like the idea of the Doctor just pulling out a random trick from his back pocket and then shrugging it off like it's no big deal, but it's kind of a big deal there, Doc. Like, I can't just go like, oh hey, look at this, it's a DVD. Oh, DVD's gone. Where'd it go? Oh, it's back. Whoa. So, gee whiz, transmigration of object. Whoa. Transmigration of your face. Anyway, there you have it. The Ambassadors of Death is a reasonably good time, just a little bit too long. I've already seen next week's story, so let's hope it doesn't drag even more, because I've already seen it and know what's coming. Oh gosh. That's right. Inferno was my first ever Jon Pertwee story, and at the very least I can say it's memorable because I still remember parts of it. Go figure. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you had a great time. I know I'm probably having a great time right now at My Chemical Romance. Yeah, anyway, tune in next week while we look at Inferno. Have a great time.